you can now, instead of buying a $300,000 house, you can now afford a $370,000 house for the same payment at 300 with mortgage rates being where they're at. I'm a huge proponent of building a home, and I'll give you a few reasons why. A seller could somehow trick you that makes you think you're buying the house, but you're really not, and then they get all your money or whatever else. So real estate has proven to be one of the safest and best investments ever. And if you do that 2 or 3 times, you will become a millionaire.
Hi guys, today with you, Elena from Best Consumer. As you know, unfortunately, the coronavirus pandemic affected many businesses, personal lives, and even the lifestyles of a lot of folks around the world. The real estate industry is no exception and has also changed during the last few months. That is why we decided to share with you some tips on how to purchase a house, to talk about the issues that first-time home buyers may face, and discuss the housing market predictions in the United States for the remainder of 2020 and the upcoming year of 2021. Now, to give you the best answers and the most valuable information, we at Best Consumer invited the Utah Realtor and new home construction specialist Ty Wilde. So, Ty, as a real estate expert, could you please explain to our viewers what it is that a person should be looking for when buying a house?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I always tell people a lot of times people are always so worried about the cost of the home, but really they should focus more on the value. And I'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later. But I always tell people to start with their minimum requirements and then look up from there. And the reason I do this is because you might find a home that's a little smaller than what you wanted, but it might be in the perfect location. Or if you're willing to look just a little further from your perfect location or your desired location, you may find a house with everything you want just a few miles from, just a few miles further from where you were looking.
Thank you very much for that answer. Very detailed. Thank you. So let us take a step back, please, for a minute. I would like to ask you a question regarding your specialty. Ty, do you sell both residential and commercial real estate, or do you focus on only one of those?
No, so I deal with existing homes and new home construction.
Thank you, Ty. Thank you very much for that answer. And when would you say is the best time to buy a house?
That's a great question. That's a question I get a ton. And it depends on you a little bit. If you buy in the spring or the summer, the best time is going to be, well, let's put it this way. There's going to be more houses available in the spring and summer, but there's also going to be a lot more competition. So if you want a lot of variety and a lot of options and you're willing to pay a little bit more, the spring and summer is a perfect time. If you're looking to get a deal, a lot of times buying in the fall or the winter is a great time because there's people who didn't sell their house in the spring and the summer and they might be a little more desperate. And now the buyers are going away as well. And so you may be able to negotiate a little bit better price that way, but you're not going to have as many options.
Speaking of the current situation with the pandemic and everything, how would you say it affected the housing market where you operate, which is the state of Utah, and the housing market in the United States in general, in your opinion?
Yeah, so the coronavirus has definitely thrown a wrench in the market. But in places like Utah, where the market was in a severe housing shortage before it happened, our market's insane right now. One of my neighbors just sold his house. He listed it in 2.5 days. There was 14 walkthroughs, 7 offers, and he sold the house for $25,000 more than his asking price. $25,000 more, not $2,500. And that's because in Utah, what happened, well, nationwide, what's happening is a ton of people are not going to sell their house anymore. People who are planning to are no longer doing it. So in Utah, where we're already in a severe housing shortage, now it's even worse because we still have all these people moving here. Some people got trapped in their apartment or their parents' basement or a non-desirable situation. Yeah, and now they're they're finding themselves like, I need to get a house right now. And so it's actually driving home prices up. It's kind of a crazy thing that's happening here. Nationwide, though, I guess I should talk on that real quick. In some locations, that's absolutely not happening. And so if you're in a situation where the market seems to be declining, it's probably going to get a little bit worse. And so you may want to hold off, even though mortgage rates are really, really good right now. It's really important to understand your local market. You need to know, in Utah, for instance, we knew we were in a severe housing shortage. The market was going like crazy before the pandemic. So if you live in a location that was like that, it's probably gonna be pretty similar to that. If you're in a location where home prices were declining, then this is probably a moment where you really need to think about your decision. And I'll just talk about mortgage rates really quick. 3%, that's insane. I mean, that's crazy. I think a year ago, we were sitting around 4.5%. So you're getting about $50,000 to $70,000 in extra buying power. So in other words, you can now, instead of buying a $300,000 house, you can now afford a $370,000 house for the same payment at $300,000 with mortgage rates being where they're at. So I personally don't see home prices in most areas of the country dropping $70,000. So as long as you're in a stable situation financially, you're going to keep your job. You've got extra money in savings in case you lose your job. You obviously want to have extra money so you can make a couple months of payments if something bad happens. Go out there and talk to a lender, and I'd say get going. Almost anywhere in the country, I'd recommend that.
Thank you very much, Ty, for such a detailed answer. Now, I believe it is important to our site visitors and users, and for everybody in general, I think, to know about these things. Now, if you look at reviews posted on our website, a lot of people write about the issue of home inspection. And not just about home inspection in general, they are asking a certain number of questions about the home inspection in their reviews. So let's say I am a first-time home buyer or maybe a repeated home buyer. I walk into a house. What should I inspect? What should I look at? What are the signs?
That is also a great question. And most people don't know this about me. I actually started in the industry as a home inspector. And so that being said, as a real estate agent, I do not inspect the home. You're right. I always recommend just don't inspect it yourself. Just pay a home inspector. They cost $300 to $500. And in almost every situation that I've ever had a client or I've personally hired a home inspector, in almost every situation, they've found more than $500 of repairs that need to be made or changes that need to be made. And that's why you want to have a real estate agent, because the real estate agent can go in there and renegotiate with the seller saying, hey, we still want the house, but we found these 3 things wrong. And really, they do need to be corrected before we can move forward. And I always tell the seller that the next person who comes in, if they get a home inspection, and they probably will, they're going to ask for those same 3 things to be done. So the seller is kind of left in a situation where they feel like, I'm going to have to do those anyways. So I might as well just do them and sell the house.
Okay, I see. So just don't expect anything, right? Let the professionals do it. Now, that brings me to another question. With the quality of the home that you are purchasing and taking into account how important it is to inspect a home before purchasing it, is there a difference between whether we are building a home from scratch or whether we are buying a home that someone else has already built?
When it comes to building a brand new home, a lot of people choose to have a home inspector, and that's great, and that's fine. I mean, if you really want one, get one. Usually with new home construction, you don't need a home inspector. The builder gives you a 1-year to 2-year warranty. and they're going to come in and fix anything that goes wrong within that time period. But I'm a huge proponent of building a home, and I'll give you a few reasons why. There's no repairing or replacing. Everything's brand new, right? So you're also going to have better quality of construction. So, houses today, they're built with the latest and greatest products and the latest building codes. So generally, and plus the builder has their warranty on their house. So generally, you're not going to have to repair or replace anything, usually for 6 or 7 or 8 years. And then you're starting with the small things, right? Also, the newer homes are way more energy efficient. You got brand new appliances and fixtures. You also get better floor plans, and you often have the option to customize. So some builders will actually allow you to say oh, can we make that family room just 2 feet bigger? We've got a really big family or whatever. And so also one thing I love about new home construction is a lot of times you're moving into a brand new neighborhood where everybody's new. Every house is new, which really holds the value of the neighborhood. It's easy to make friends because a lot of people are moving from out of state or from just even across the city, and they don't have friends. So, I mean, there's a lot more advantages to building than just getting a new home. And so I like my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, they lived in Henderson, Nevada, and they had a small home site with zero landscaping, but it was a master planned community. They had swimming pools, parks, basketball courts, tennis courts, and they didn't have to maintain anything. So there's a lot of advantages to that. The disadvantages to building is that you won't have mature landscaping. I've been in my house for 6 years now, and my trees are still this big around, maybe 10 or 12 feet tall. And so it would be nice to have some shade trees, but I won't have those for another probably 5 years. And then I guess the other advantage to not building is usually with existing homes, you can get closer to the city or closer to work or things like that, right? So I don't know. I guess one more advantage I didn't really think about is if you're patient when buying an existing home, maybe you'll find someone who's desperate, and maybe you'll get a really good deal. So I don't know. Personally, I just feel like it's better to build. Right now in Utah, where people are bidding up and up and up for the houses, it becomes a crazy thing. You might pay 10 or 15,000 more for the house, or in my neighbor situation, someone paid 25,000 more for the house. With a home builder, you just go in and pick the house you want, and you lock the price, and you're not having to worry about multiple offers to fight for the house.
Now, another question that usually concerns the newbies, so to speak, the newbies. What if a person has no idea as to the undercurrents of home purchasing, home buying, where to go, what to do, completely blank page? Are there any legal matters, legal issues that such a person needs to consider or maybe even get legal advice about prior to looking into buying a home, and of course prior to purchasing a home consequently?
Yeah, that's an incredible question, and I know why that should worry a lot of people, because there is a lot that can go wrong, and that's why most people use either an attorney or a realtor, especially when they're buying the house, right? Because a seller could somehow trick you that makes you think you're buying the house, but you're really not, and then they get all your money or whatever else. But really, right now, the big thing is wire fraud. So for those of you who don't know what wire fraud is, that's where an outside party tricks the buyer into wiring their down payment to them instead of to the title company. So in most situations when this happens, the buyer loses that money, and of course they can no longer buy that home. So for most people, this is tens of thousands of dollars, but for some people, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the good thing about having a realtor or an attorney there is they're going to walk you through the appointment. And I tell them personally, and I send in emails as we get closer to closing. Hey guys, do not wire your money to anyone until there's a phone call made. And then as soon as you wire that money, you need to verify with the title company that they have received that money. because you have to catch this within minutes. There was a real estate agent up in Park City, Utah. Park City is a more expensive area. Michael Jordan had a home up there, Will Smith, a lot of these, big stars buy homes up there. Anyway, as realtor, she was actually working with a friend to purchase a $1 million home up there. The friend had sold her house and received all of her equity, which was a couple $100,000, which she was going to put down on the $1 million home, right? You would want to do that. Well, someone sent her client just the day before closing, I believe, or the day of closing, sent her an email saying, here's your wiring instructions, let's get it going. So the client tried to call her realtor friend, but her realtor friend was actually in a real estate class at that moment. So she's like, okay, well, she just sent the money, and she left the message with the agent. Hey, I wired the money. We should be good. Everything should be good to go. And when the agent got out of her class, she saw the message and she was like, no. So she had been called the buyer, called the title company. The title company had not received the money. And that client lost a couple $100,000 of her money. And she lost the ability to buy that house. And the FBI, everybody tried to get on it and get the money, but they did not find that they couldn't get the money. And so the sad part of the story is that friendship between that real estate agent and that buyer has been dissolved. And that buyer is actually suing the realtor over that loss of money. She's also suing the title company and everybody else because, she's heartbroken, right? That's a horrible situation. You wouldn't know what to do. But basically, everything you've ever built through real estate, making those extra house payments or building that equity, it's just gone. And it probably, for some people, for a lot of people, it would change their life forever in a very bad way.
So, Ty, in your opinion, what are the most common issues first-time home buyers may face? And what are the best ways, in your opinion, to deal with them? Maybe if you could name us like the key 3 or the key 5 issues, if you don't mind.
I think, especially when you're buying an existing home, most buyers are surprised with the number of repairs it takes to keep the home running smoothly. Especially if you're buying a house that's like 25 years or older, you're going to have a new problem pop up at least once a month. And it's just going to be kind of annoying. And once again, when I was talking about value, that's why when you buy a brand new home, you might pay $10,000 more, but you're getting the value in the fact that you're not repairing or replacing anything for years and years. So, that's kind of one thing to think about. Also, one of the biggest surprises for a lot of people, almost everyone I meet wants this huge yard, right? I want this big yard. I do this and that and everything. Well, I have 2 acres and I love it. But let me tell you something. It is expensive and time consuming. So be careful what you ask for. You might get it. Those are really, to me, the biggest surprises for new home buyers.
Well, nowadays there are some people, and especially females, somehow it happens. There are even such females amongst my girlfriends. They are stay-at-home moms, and all of a sudden they decide, well, you know what? I'm not working. I have plenty of free time at my hands. So why don't I try to sell real estate or to be a real estate investor and make some money on the side? After all, I don't have to do anything. All I need to do is sit at my computer and look pretty, right? It should be nice and easy. So what would you say to someone who decides to invest in real estate? Yes, no, maybe so. Should they do it? Shouldn't they do it? What would your advice be?
So real estate has proven to be one of the safest and best investments ever. So should you invest in real estate? The answer is definitely. So I do strongly believe that you should be investing in the stock market, real estate. You want to be you should have your money in different places. But for those of you, so how to invest in real estate? If you're really young and you have a good job and all that stuff, I recommend buying a house to live in and renting out the spare rooms or a portion of your home. And after 2 years, if possible, I mean, it might take you 3 or 4 or 5 years, but after 2 years, sell that, or don't sell that home. Turn that home that you currently live in into a rental property, and then you buy another home where you can do the same thing. And if you do that 2 or 3 times, you will become a millionaire. I honestly, I'm actually working on a YouTube video right now that's going to go over this in depth. And so, once again, if you subscribe to my channel, you'll get that notification about that video. If you're a married couple or you have children, you want to do it differently, because it's a little bit harder to like rent out a room in your house when you got all your kids there, right? Most people don't want to do that. So, and I don't blame them. So if you're a married couple, you already have your home and you're thinking, man, maybe it's time we start buying a rental property. There's a couple different options. You could buy a duplex and you can live in one side and rent out the other side. In Utah, we have basements. So a lot of people will live upstairs and rent out their basement. So that's a great way to get started. That's really, really safe. You could always just save up your money and buy that second property. And right now with mortgage rates at 3%, even though as an investor, you won't get as good of a rate, right? You don't get a good, your rate's worse on a rental property than it is on your personal home. And that's going back to with the young people when I recommend staying in the house for 2 years, because the next house, you keep that one as a rental, your mortgage rate doesn't change. You still get to keep that awesome mortgage rate. When you buy the new house 2 years later, you can buy that as your primary residence and once again get that amazing mortgage rate. And so that's why if you could do that 2 or 3 times and have 2 rental properties plus your house, or 3 rental properties, you will become a millionaire. I mean, it is that simple. So you just want to make sure you don't overextend yourself, right? That's when people are like, well, it's dumb to invest in real estate. Well, don't. If you have 20% down and you have to put the entire 20% down to buy the house and it leaves you nothing in savings, you're probably making a mistake, right? Hold on. Just wait another 6 months. And so you need savings in the bank. And then people get too aggressive trying to pay stuff off, try to pay off the houses. I have an account right now. Every time I receive rent, it just stays in that account, and that account just builds up, and well, we won't talk about how much money I have in there, but let's just say I could go 6 months without receiving payments and pay the mortgages on my properties. And so that's what you want to do. Don't try to get aggressive and pay it off. I know it's tempting, but it's better. You have to protect your investment. There's something I do that a lot of people are kind of afraid of, or maybe haven't even heard of. And it's kind of rent on steroids. And it's called seller finance. And so what I'm doing is I have a couple of properties like this. I have some regular rental properties, but I also have some seller finance properties. Seller finance properties are a lot less risky. And I'll need to do a video on this as well. I don't have something in the works, but seller finance is an amazing program where you purchase the house and then rent it for a year. And after that year, you can actually sell it. But you sell it as you being the bank. So the people buying it from you, they put their 10% down or whatever to buy the house from you, but you can actually charge a little bit higher mortgage rate. And it's not treated like a rental property because they're buying it from you, like you're buying your house from the bank. They have to do all repairs, replacement, all that stuff is up to them. So as a manager, you don't have to manage the property. You just get paid.
So, Ty, one last question from me to you for today. It is a bit of a, so to speak, philosophical nature. So let us be Nostradamuses. Let us take that crystal ball and look into it. So in your opinion, what would the prediction be for the housing market in the United States for the remainder of 2020 and for the upcoming year of 2021?
That is probably the big question right now. That's probably the biggest thing people are worried about or concerned about. And it would probably take a real wizard to know exactly what to say to each person in their individual situations. But obviously, thanks to the coronavirus, the housing market is going to vary greatly from region to region. So even city to city, like you could have a city just 30 minutes away that's having a completely different experience, right? So as we spoke earlier, in Utah, home sales have skyrocketed and so have home prices. And that's due to the crazy low mortgage rates, but also because of the severe housing shortage. So another factor driving up home prices is that because of the COVID-19, which you spoke about earlier, people just, all over the country, people aren't selling their houses anymore. And why? That's because they're scared, or also because maybe they did lose their job for 3 months. Maybe they're going to have, it destroyed their credit. And maybe those people are, hopefully, a lot of those people are able to hold on to that house and keep that house. But they will not be able to buy a new house because their credit's been destroyed. So they cannot sell that house now and get a new house. And so there's just a lot of reasons why people are not going to sell their house right now. And a lot of conservative people are like, you know what, we were going to move up to a bigger house, but you know what, let's just stay in this house. If something bad like this ever happens again, we are safe here in this house with a small house payment. It'll be paid off in 15 years, right? So now the big wrench here is mortgage forbearance, and that could really hurt a lot of markets around the country. Now in Utah, we don't expect that to affect us at all, really. I mean, maybe just a little bit, but in other parts of the country where the market was already bad, it could be really, really bad. I mean, it could make things a lot worse. And in that situation, if you're in a city where things are declining and they were declining before the coronavirus, it's a situation where you might not want to buy a house yet. When you feel like home prices have kind of bottomed out, that's going to be your moment. But you have to remember the one thing to think about is that mortgage rates are amazing right now. So, you have to weigh that. If you're in a horrible, horrible market, I would say not to buy a house yet. But if it's kind of just a stale market, like it's just kind of sitting there, then it's probably a great time to buy a house. And home prices over time have always gone up. So even if you buy a house today and get this amazing 3% mortgage rate and your home value drops 20%, but mortgage rates go up 1%, you're still sitting in a $30,000 better situation, right? So that's why I think the mortgage rates are the difference right now. But please, 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 if you buy a house right now, please keep 6 months of payments in the bank, just in case it happens to you. Because the last thing I want to see as a real estate agent is I don't want to see someone buy a house and see them lose that house a few months later because of something bad. So be wise. Real estate is the most beautiful, safest, best investment that you can have, but you cannot put every dime down just to get the house, because you're putting yourself in a very, very dangerous situation. Even if you think the money's coming, you just can't do that. So I just recommend, if you want to buy a house, study your local market. If you feel good about where things are and where things are going, then I think you should move forward. And you always start by talking to a lender first to make sure you qualify for the house. But like I said, because we're living in these crazy times, I only recommend you buy a home if you have a very stable job, little to no debt. Do not buy a house if you have $50,000 in college debt. I mean, you can't do that. And then, of course, like I said earlier, just make sure you have, I'd say at least 4 months, but I'd feel better if you had 6 months of house payments. And you got to remember, with house payments, it's not just that $1,500 or $2,000 per month house payment. You need to consider your utility bills and other costs that come with your home. So just make sure you have that in savings before you move forward on the purchase of a home.
Wonderful advice. Thank you, Ty. So the motto here is, the conclusion here is, be wise, right?
Work hard so you can buy real estate as investment and build yourself a beautiful nest egg. So you can retire early and in style, right?
Oh, I like that quote of yours. I'm definitely making a note of that. Retire early and in style. I'm definitely going to say that to my husband. Honey, we are going to retire in style.